Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's going to be a really quick reading update. I didn't get to a lot because I got sick with the flu and I just hit me like a ton of bricks. So it is that season, I guess, cold and flu season. So I did manage to finish a few things and I told you I would get to my review of Lord of the Flies. But first let me go over my manga that I read just really quickly because that'll be a lot quicker. Then I will go to my full review. So let's talk about Deep Scar, which I will put here. Oh, there's my friend back there. So Deep Scar, I do not recommend. I read the first 3 books and it was fine, going along just fine. It was like more of a drama, romance kind of situation, but like nothing romantic had really happened. But it starts with this girl basically going to school. She leaves and goes to college and she has a roommate, and so she's having this first like taste of freedom, and her parents have been very controlling. So then with this new roommate who's like the opposite of her, she's very crazy and wild and parties, and this other girl is like very, very quiet and reserved, and she doesn't live that lifestyle. So they meet, they're not sure how they're going to get along, but then she meets more of her friends and she feels like, oh, this is like the life I want to live. I want to get out there and have these fun, like young, kid experiences, whatever. The whole thing being that like you find out, I guess this is spoilers, that she was in an accident. She's like lost significant parts of her memory. Her personality has been altered, all of this stuff. And it was all wrapped up in the last book where, of course, there was then an intimate scene with a guy that she kind of knew from her past but had forgotten. It was ridiculous. I was super annoyed because it felt like this was supposed to be a much longer series, and then in the end they're like, throw it all in the last book, everything. Because it was very slow going, and then the last book's like, no, she was in an accident. She lost all her memories. Everyone was manipulating her. She all this weird stuff. And so not my favorite. Don't really recommend, but I did read that. It was like a super quick 4-book series. It got me. Okay, so then I finished book 7 of Attack on Titan, and I am so frustrated. So there will be spoilers for that book and where we're at in the series. So I feel like I'm still waiting on so many things to be revealed, and I'm just annoyed about that because in book 7, so we know that Eren can turn into a Titan, but he is in a group, like the military is basically like signed off on him being part of this group to go out with the the people who go outside of the walls, and he's, training with these new people, and I think a lot of them die in this, like from what I've seen, a lot of people just died in the end of the last book. So that's a bummer. But also he is out there to try and lure out these other Titans that might be controlled by humans. So that's what happens. A female Titan who also has a person controlling her, so inside of her, attacks them, kills a bunch of people. They try and capture her. They're like so close to figuring out who's inside, like basically piloting this Titan. And I was so frustrated because of course they lose her. Eren ends up fighting her, and then he loses, and she like throws him in her mouth. Like, he's not going to die, probably. Like, you never know if they're going to kill off a character. I feel like there's only 3 characters that are pretty safe, and those are like our original 3. But anyway, they end up rescuing Eren, and then the female Titan escapes. And it's such a bummer because I just want answers. So now they have to go back. Their mission failed. Eren and like his fate is unknown because they weren't able to actually capture this other Titan, and a lot of the people with him got killed. So what will the government say? There's kind of like this going to be this backlash against them because they used all these resources and all these people died for a mission that failed. So that's what book 8 is going to be about, I'm sure, but I wasn't able to get it on my Kindle. For some reason it's not working, not downloading correctly, so we'll see when I get to that. That was annoying. However, I did finish also Lord of the Flies. So we'll get into that. Here it is. I have mixed feelings about this. I feel like this is not a book I like. Reading now, it doesn't have the impact on me that it would have had if I would have read this like in high school. This is one of those books that is a good discussion book. It's good to talk about like, why did this happen? The breakdown of society. There's a lot of those themes that are really good for like a group discussion in a high school setting. For me, it's really well written. I understand the themes, I get where this was going, but I will not say I enjoyed it because that would be ridiculous. I didn't enjoy it. And I think if you don't know what this is about, I don't know how you wouldn't know, like most people know the story, but I don't think that even if I didn't know that I would have been surprised, because it feels very much like there's an oppressiveness and kind of this darkness to the story where it's like, you can see the path we're going down. And I didn't feel like it was one of those like out of the blue, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. It didn't surprise me that way. I know some of the spoilers for this book, but some of it I didn't know. So there's that. I will go over really briefly what it's about, but I'm not going to go like a full detailed, in-depth look at the whole story because that would take too long and I am still getting over being sick. So you start out with a plane crash that like dumps basically all these kids on this island. They're all boys, and during the war, I believe, so their plane was shot down or something. It's kind of like implied that all the adults, like they had one pilot, you never find out like what happened. I'm guessing he died. It's assumed. And then all the kids, pretty much survived, and they're just on this island. So you have little kids, anywhere from like 7 years old to the bigger kids that are like 12. And all the boys are just, trying to figure out what to do. So Ralph is one of our main characters, and in the beginning, him and this other boy that they just call Piggy. I don't even remember if they ever tell you what his real name is, but it's not very nice that they call him that because he doesn't want to be called that. But that's what he is known throughout the book. So it's Ralph and Piggy. And they find a shell, they blow through the shell, Ralph does, and calls all the other boys, and they gather, and they're trying to decide what to do. So it kind of emerges that the strong personalities of the group are Ralph and Jack. And Jack is the leader of like the boys who were in the choir, I guess. I'm assuming that these boys all came from a similar school or a similar area. So some of them may have known each other ahead of time. And that's why there's like the choir boys that were all in the choir. And then you have like the kids that, are separate from them. It's not really gone into in depth. So you have Jack and Ralph. And then there's another boy, Simon, who's going to be another main character who's like kind of quiet and reserved, likes to explore, likes to kind of think. And so there's your four mains. You have Ralph, Piggy, Jack, and Simon. And so it comes about that Ralph is voted as chief, and they go to explore the island, and Ralph and Jack are and I think Simon's with them, they kind of just go explore the island. And they decide that what they really need to do is set a signal fire, so they can be rescued. This is all, and Ralph's whole thing is like, we're going to be rescued. I do not want to be here. And Jack's whole thing is like, let's get hunting. We got to figure out food. We got to figure out meat. Ralph is like, we got to set a fire. We got to build shelters. It's a very different, like, you can see the pole here and there. And I think people look at this and think, like that the breakdown happens at a certain point in the book. For me, as soon as there's an event, and I'll get into some spoilers now. So when the boys light the fire the first time, they end up setting fire to a large portion of this jungle that they're in on this island. And they kill, they believe, one of the other boys. And it, like, not on purpose, but there's a kid in the beginning when they were all gathering that had like a very distinctive birthmark, and they never find him again. And to me, that was the breaking point of the book. That's where the breakdown begins, and it just gets worse and worse from there. Obviously, like these boys are going to resort to very bad things and be completely different. Like they're going to resort to, basically murder at points in this book. So, for me, that was the breakdown of where it all went wrong. And I think it's because that it kind of opened the door of like, someone has already died. Not on purpose, not by their hand, but like in the beginning when they're exploring, Jack kind of goes to kill this animal and fails. But it's once that death has happened, once that it opens the door for then Jack and his group to feel like, okay, well that's happened. Because the next time they go to hunt, they kill a pig, and it's like, then, it's so much, they're like, no, we can do this now. And I think that was where I felt like it really was the breaking point of the book. Because even though they never find the kid with the birthmark dead, it's like, it's already, something terrible's already happened. We've already moved past it. We've already, kind of in our childlike minds decided, okay, well, we can't think about that too much. And so you have it with these kids that are experiencing these very like adult horrible things, processing it like children, but then they're just getting worse and worse. Some fractions of them are, okay, well now, we're going to go kill and we're going to go hunt. And yeah, it starts off for food, and then of course it gets worse and worse. So the other thing that happens that's a big turning point in the book is they don't know, but there's planes fighting over the island, because this is during the war. And so one of the pilots gets shot, like his plane gets shot down. He parachutes out, but is not alive by the time he falls on the island. But he lands on like a top hill of this island, and kids start to believe that this is like a monster. They don't know, because they're not getting close enough to see that it's just a dead guy in a parachute stuck up there. And so this is what unfortunately leads to our first real murder of the book. And it's sad, obviously, but that this is part of the breakdown of, the society of these little boys, that as soon as fear is introduced, then they're feeling like, okay, well, we need to protect ourselves. They're not acting rationally, even though they weren't, before. This is even worse. So they believe that there's like this monster now that they have to take care of, that has to be dealt with one way or another. So of course, Simon, he's kind of represents the more, he's a logical person. Basically, every time any logic is introduced, it is not taken well by the group. They're being led by feelings. It's a very, very sad, like point about group dynamics, that, feelings and emotions can very much like lead a whole group astray. So Simon he discovers it's just a guy in a parachute who's dead. And so he goes down to try and tell them. Unfortunately, he does this at night, comes upon the group as they're celebrating their big kill, and they see him coming out of the woods, and they attack him and kill him. So that's the first real murder. And Piggy and Ralph are there. They see all this happening. They're kind of in like the throng of boys that's all just going crazy, and they don't really know what's happening, but they're just caught up in it in the moment. And then, of course, the next day they realize, like, we just killed somebody. And Ralph and Piggy can't really, Piggy can't even really accept it. Ralph is trying to hey, that was murder. Look what we did. Ralph's trying to say, we need to deal with this. What have we done? So there's further breakdown of the, Ralph being the chief. The boys kind of split apart. Jack is taking all the boys into the woods, and they're living as Jack is their chief, and they're, we're going to hunt, we're going to kill. And so, to make a long story short, so to wrap this up, eventually the boys steal Piggy's glasses, because he's the only one that has the glasses that can make the fires that they've been setting. The other tribe comes in, steals the boys, the other boys that are led by Jack come in, steal Piggy's glasses, and they go, Ralph and Piggy, and right now they've got two other boys with them. They're the twins. They go try and get them back, and another boy pushes a rock down, and it hits and kills Piggy. And this is the next murder. So at this point, the twins are captured. That was their only other ally. Ralph is on his own, and the other boys are hunting him down to kill him. And so that's where we're at with the story. It's sad. It's just, you feel for Ralph, but in a way, it's like Ralph is just any other boy. There's not anything distinctive about Ralph. It's just that he was one of the boys that was like, no, we can be rescued. And he tried to use logic and reason and tried to, we need to light the fire. We need to, his whole thing was, I want to be rescued. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be, hunting and surviving. I want to get out of this. So Ralph is being hunted down. They start to set fires to kind of smoke him out, and they're, hunting him with their spears. And as all hope seems to be lost, a adult shows up, who's there. Obviously, they saw the smoke from the fire that the boys had lit and came to rescue them. And it kind of just ends with all the boys sobbing on the beach, realizing what's happened, that they're murderers, and that they have to now tell this to the adults, what happened and how horrible it all went. And it kind of just ends there. So I know there are greater themes about, the evilness of man, whether that's something you're born with, how quickly also that society breaks down. I think especially once there's no authority structure, especially for these being little boys, there's no adults. They keep saying things, about if the adults were here. But I think as soon as you don't have them, that kind of frees them to be acting and doing things that they would never have thought of. And I think too, the initial death of that first boy, even though it was accidental, I think it really opens up the kids, feelings of like, okay, well, it's happened. Now we can, they act in ways that they never would have done if that wouldn't have happened, I feel. And that's just my opinion. And of course, then once Simon dies, then they can kill anybody they want. So it is very sad. It is worth reading. I like the writing. I do think there is this like oppressive feeling from the beginning, not with just like the jungle and the heat and, they're trying to, keep track of things and make sure that the fire is burning. And there's all of these, little like fights amongst the boys and the power struggle. But it's just ultimately, a very like sad story that I did not enjoy, but I do think it's worth reading. I would put it with Brave New World, which I also did not enjoy, but I appreciate. So for me with classic literature, I can step back and say whether I like it or whether it's an important book, like whether it's worth reading is different than me liking it. I do think this is a good book. I would say you should read it if you haven't. I do think it's a very interesting story, and I think it's well written, for sure. I definitely felt like sad. I felt there's kind of like this feeling of like an impending doom from the beginning. I felt like you kind of got that feeling that something bad is going to happen. And as, the boys kind of get worse and worse and worse as they're living there, you see the little things that are starting to happen. Like one boy's just throwing rocks at another boy for no reason. Like not to like hurt him yet, but you see where like these certain kids are having these feelings and doing these things. And there's this like, why not? Nothing can stop me, and it reminded me of my brother saying on a trip, he was talking about when kids go on like trips with school, to like, whether they go to like Washington, D.C. or something. He's like, there's like this feeling that you're in a different place and you can act different, that people don't know you there, that you can be, things you would never say, things you would never do, because there's like this anonymity and there's this like, okay, well, no one knows me here. I'm in a foreign place. And you definitely get that very quickly, like the rules, there's no rules here. No one knows us, like no one can keep us accountable. And it gets very dark, very sad, but definitely worth reading. And I do recommend. And I don't think I will read it again anytime soon, but I'll sit with it. And then, I think in the few years, maybe read it again, because it's not something I would never say I would never touch again. But I also feel like that with Brave New World, like I would read it again, eventually. It's a good one. And I think it's one you want to think about and sit with and discuss, and I think that's why it's a good read. So that's my thoughts on Lord of the Flies. I definitely am hoping to get to more this week than I did last week, like I said, since I was sick. But I also have plans to do kind of a channel discussion. I am kind of thinking about a name change and where I want to go with the channel in the future. So let me know how your reading is going this week. And if you have any recommendations, let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you soon.